So what's really interesting is this testimony happened just a few weeks ago. And basically I wanted to dive into the Word and meditate a little bit deeper. Not just only read it, but actually like sit there and take in just a few verses and really try to dive in to what those verses were meaning and really let the Holy Spirit talk to me. So the other night I just opened up to James. It's one of my favorite books in the Bible. I open it up and I just start reading. And the second verse through the fourth verse really hit me hard. I'll just go ahead and read it now. My brethren means like fellow believers. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Now it was interesting because I didn't have any place in particular that I was really looking for to actually just stop and meditate on. But that really hit me and I was like, well, why is patience allowing us to be perfect and complete, lacking nothing? And so I was laying in bed and I was really just thinking of that and you know, interestingly enough, nothing came to me right away and I got really tired and just fell asleep. So the next morning I wake up and there was like a credit card or a debit card that came to the house that, you know, I've been holding off a little bit, like calling in and activating. And, you know, without really looking at it much, I saw it. I woke up that morning, it was like 6:30, I woke up and just went right after it and then, you know, called, activated it, all that good stuff. And right afterwards, I actually I looked at it and was like, oh no, this isn't my bank card, like what is this? And so Liv was sitting next to me, my wife was sitting next to me. And you know, again, it was like 6:30, 7 o'clock at this point, and I almost got mad at her for not catching it for me. It was like so ugly and twisted, and I didn't say anything. And I was like, man, like why'd I do that? And so what was really interesting was she just said to me, she's like, well, just call. And like, if there's one thing I really dislike in this world, I mean, it's at least in my top 5, right, is waiting on hold for a credit card company, you know, like Comcast, like whatever, waiting on hold. It's just one of like, I don't know, that just really irritates me. So what's funny was I call and the wait time says at least an hour. I'm like, oh, here we go. So I put the headphones in, I start to draw a little bit and I even try to like open up the Word and start reading again with like, you know, through this book of James, and I just couldn't focus. And at this point now it's like 7:15, 7:20, and she leaves and the dog is starting to bark because he wants to go on a walk now. So I'm like, you know what, all right, fine, yes, we should probably go on a walk. It's probably good to go pray. So we go on a walk, and as I'm just praying, I'm like, Lord, like, what do you want me to learn from this situation? You know, as my earbuds are in, I could still hear, you know, the waiting music playing. And so I go ahead and I just start praying. I'm thanking him for just revealing to me whatever he wants me to learn from this whole situation. And my prayer gets quiet, and I hear that monotone voice say, thank you for your patience. We'll be with you shortly. And so now I'm laughing because, you know, just the night before, just a few hours earlier, I was diving into what that patience word actually really meant. And I just started laughing because I'm like, all right, Lord, I know you want me to learn something here. So, you know, what is it? And so what was funny was I started kind of thinking back on, you know, James 1 verses 2 through 4. And I even pull up my phone as I'm walking and as I'm reading it. I'm like, okay, it says, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. And so I keep reading that. I'm like, this is really interesting. Something's going on here. And so if you ever heard me speak before, I always use faith, I always use spiritual muscle as sort of that parallel. And so what I did was, the Lord kind of showed me, well, plug spiritual muscle into faith. And so I went into that again. I said, so count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing the testing of your spiritual muscle produces patience, right? And so then I looked in the Amplified version, which is, it pretty much takes some of these bigger words and puts like the actual meanings from the actual original text, whether it's Greek, Hebrew, or Aramaic, right? And so it takes that Greek word patience and it uses the word actually endurance. And so what's interesting is I read that again and I'm like, okay, well, use the word endurance. So patience could very well be our spiritual endurance. That would make sense. So I go ahead, he reveals to me to plug that in. So I go and I read it again. Count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith or your spiritual muscle produces spiritual endurance. All right, so now I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. So spiritual muscle, spiritual endurance. And I was like, okay, well, let's use this fitness analogy. Let's keep going here. And so it says, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. So the Lord revealed to me, well, a trial could be like a workout, right? So it says, count it all joy when you fall into various workouts, knowing that the testing of your spiritual muscle produces spiritual endurance. Let that spiritual endurance have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. And so I thought about that. I was like, that's really interesting because, for example, I'm looking to continue to work out, to gain muscle, things like that. You know, even somebody that's going to the gym to work out, to try to lose weight, they don't see the result in the first week. They might lose a pound or two, maybe 5, right? But they don't see that 50 pounds come off. It takes that consistency. And what it does is it actually builds physical endurance. And so even like the runner, right? Let's say somebody's running and they're training for a mile. Let's say their first time they run it, it's like 8 minutes long. And then, you know, after a couple months of training, now they're done to 6.5 minutes. Well, you could say that their endurance has improved. They were actually able to perform it in a faster time, right? So this is what was interesting. It starts out saying, count it all joy when you fall into various trials or workouts. So now, instead of going into that workout like dreading it, we can actually go into it with joy, like, okay, cool, this is gonna be awesome because after this, I'm gonna gain a little bit more of an endurance and my muscle's gonna get a little bit stronger. So we can go into the same trial, like when we have a trial in life that we're going through, we can actually go into it instead of like saying poor me and really thinking like negatively about the situation and thinking down on yourself. You can actually go into it from that perspective of like, this is gonna be awesome because my spiritual muscle, my spiritual endurance is actually going to improve during this time. And so what's even cooler is, the Lord revealed to me, there's a couple words here that really jumped off the page to me. So count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. Those 3 words there, those are all fruits of the Spirit, right? And this is why I'm bringing this up. When I was younger, oh my gosh, I was the most impatient kid ever. And there's even times in the natural now that, you know, I might struggle with patience, right? And this would even be considering what was happening that morning to me when I was, going through like listening to to that monotone music playing that I was waiting on hold, and I ended up waiting on hold for an hour and a half. It was quite wild, but during that time, the Lord revealed so much to me and that I was charged up in that moment that I could have waited 2 hours and I've been perfectly fine. Joy, faith, and patience are all fruits of the Spirit. Now, when I was younger, I went through, my parents would always tell me, you gotta be patient, be patient, be patient. You're so impatient. What's interesting is, on my own, I can never be patient. I can never be patient on my own. But through the power of the Holy Spirit that lives within me, patience is a byproduct. Galatians 5:22-24, it says, the fruit of the Spirit, or the result of His presence within us, is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faith, gentleness, and self-control. The reason why I say faith there, I know in the Amplified Version it says faithfulness, but I looked in the King James Version and it actually states the word faith, right? So I never knew this, that faith, just the word faith, is a byproduct of the Holy Spirit within us, right? So these 3 verses here, these can just be possible, and we can now receive them through the power of grace. We don't have to work for this to be a possibility, right? So I'll read it again. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Now, in the past, under the law, under me trying to have to do this, I would have read this and been like, okay, I've got to really work on, my patience here, and that, through faith, it'll produce the patience, but, I've got to really be happy during this time. Now, wait a minute. We can just simply receive this promise and this prayer. We can just say, Lord, I thank you so much for loving me, that you've blessed me not only with a patient spirit, but you've blessed me with a joyful spirit and a spirit that has faith. And Lord, I thank you for allowing me to receive those things. And I thank you for all that you've given me here. The joy, the patience, and the faith will make me perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Not on my own will, but because of your Spirit within me. So it really hit me hard, because I used to think the word patience was I had to do it on my own. And not even that I had to, like, it was almost like it was about waiting. Where in reality, patience is just our spiritual endurance, right? And so, again, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, because the testing of your faith produces patience. And the best part is, God has given us a patient spirit, a faith-filled spirit, and a spirit of joy. I pray this has been a blessing for you. Hey guys, so first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you really enjoyed it, please feel free to subscribe to the YouTube page and also to follow me on Instagram at RobBrowG1. Thank you guys. Have a blessed day.